Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Quick reminder to people who are showing up on the Patreon feed yelling at me that I'm not here yet. We're at a weird time this morning, and I always try to give you guys a little bit of extra time to log on, in part because if I don't, then I get complaints that people can't get in, and I've already started talking. So, so please just be patient. If there's a technical issue, we'll let you know ASAP, but there isn't one this morning. What's happening is that I have to go a little bit early because I've got a meeting that was scheduled months ago at 11 o'clock at my time. So, hello, everybody. Welcome. And I'm actually not surprised I'm echoing because I forgot to turn my AirPods on. Okay, now it should be better. If anybody can't hear me, let me know right away. Let me just check in with that. And oh, good, Anne. All right, so there we are. Everything's fine. See, this is how this morning is going, by the way, because the kids are still in virtual learning downstairs, and we've got materials pick up today. It may be you, Anne. If you're echoing, please make sure that you don't have something that's playing back. Or you've got me open on two windows. That happens sometimes. Okay, anyway, hello. It's just like one of those completely crazy days. I feel like the energy of where we are is kind of like right now. And it's definitely tricky and weird. A couple things I just want to mention here real quick. Obviously, what we saw last night, I did not watch Melania's speech because I just had enough. By the time we got to the naturalization ceremony, and I just have these moments, all this work that I did on immigration last year, when you have been up front and center with people who have been working on immigration under the Trump administration, and then you watch something like what happened last night, it's really hard to not just want to throw up. I thought that was just disgusting. And, he's willing to use people who otherwise he would not be willing to let in over the border, or would stick in camps, or would separate from their families. And so all of that last night was just really, really rough. And I got to a point, the kids didn't want me watching it, and I didn't want to be watching it anymore. And so we kind of let the whole thing go before Melania was on. I've, seen the coverage since. I agree with all of you who are horrified about the fact that certain media outlets like, oh, this was a sense of normalcy from, I don't care, do you? No, it actually wasn't. And I'll just add a couple of other things. That one of the things that we have to keep in mind here is not just the words that are being said, but also the optics. So, this is a woman who tore down the Rose Garden, literally tore out the roses of every prior first lady since Jackie Kennedy, in order, this is one of the things that's very clear now, in order to be able to swing a camera. This is really what happened, in my opinion. There are others who are speculating about this morning. In order to be able to swing a camera on a boom through the walkway of the White House for this event, literally destroyed decades of history inside the White House in order to be able to do that. That's one thing. The second thing about it is she's in basically military garb up there talking. It's the theater of the authoritarian right wing. And so, I just want everybody to understand that, from where we are right now, there's just quite a significant degree to which we have to pay attention to not just the aspects of this that are, about the words she's saying, none of which she really means anyway. I'm going to remind you all that the footage of her talking about Obama's birth certificate on The View back when Trump was running for president initially is circulating again. She's a racist birther, so we have to really be just incredibly conscious and mindful about, reading the signs, right? The iconography of what we're seeing in addition to the words. And there is nothing about last night or anything that I caught about it afterwards that should make anybody feel any better about where we are. Not to mention there were some other great moments, the kid who threatened a Native American elder in a MAGA hat got up there and talked about how he had been canceled. Meanwhile, he's on television broadcasting to millions of people, looking like Brett Kavanaugh Jr. It was last night was rough. So look, I think we're in a place where we have to see it for what it is. We still have 2 more nights of this bullshit to go. I mean, that in and of itself is really quite frightening. So we have to kind of, stay on the straight and narrow here about what's actually going on. What is happening here is fundamentally, a propaganda spectacle for the base and for Donald Trump. One other thing I will just mention right now, the kids last night, Tiffany and Eric, you should go watch the mashup that the recount threw together of my father, 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 because I will just, let you know that, the vast majority of this is for an audience of one. And it is what it is, as the president likes to say. So, I'm going to keep watching it, of course, because I'm just watching the signals of all of this. I'm going to remind you all of what I said yesterday, which is that just because it's getting a lot of coverage this week doesn't mean that there's not a lot of support behind Biden and Harris and that that's continuing to grow. This happens during every convention where, the news cycle turns to the convention while it's on. I hope that if you are choosing to watch it, you are watching it on MSNBC, because the coverage by Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow and Nicole Wallace together has been great. Both of them burst out laughing. All of them burst out laughing last night at the end of Pam Bondi's speech, which was kind of like my highlight because Pam Bondi is such a freaking hypocrite. But nonetheless, like, you are not obligated to watch it. And please understand that if you are watching it, what you are getting is like a face full of propaganda and not really much else. I'm going to add a couple of other things here. Like, yes, everything that happened last night on federal grounds was a Hatch Act violation. However, I am going to, the one thing you should know is that Hatch Act violations are not punishable by prison time. They are punishable by fines. You can be kept out of federal service for 5 years. But I'm going to repeat what Leah Claypool, who, by the way, was, one of the digital organizers for the Warren campaign. One of the things she said last night, which was, they're out here basically comfortable with killing like 60% of us. And the response of the Democrats is like, oh, it's a Hatch Act violation. Yeah, it doesn't mean that corruption doesn't matter. And it doesn't mean that the Hatch Act violations aren't real. But like, let's really deal with the reality of where we are. Like, what they're out there advocating for is a fascist dictatorship. And the Hatch Act violations are a big deal. They're not as big a deal as the fact that, there's bounties on U.S. troops and there's human beings still being held in immigration detention camps. And we have almost 180,000 dead Americans now from COVID with no incoming federal response of any kind to stop it. So, we're in a situation now where we do have to kind of have some moderation of understanding of where we are. Like, the Hatch Act is not going to bring down this administration. They don't give a shit about the Hatch Act. Mark Meadows said as much this morning. He was basically like, nobody outside the Beltway cares about this. I mean, I care about it because it is corrupt, right? And it is a violation of law. But I also want everybody to kind of like get the real picture here, right? Like, they don't care if we live or die. If they're reelected, they're going to kill a lot more of us. And the fact of the matter is that at this point, we have to be focused on 2020, like 2020, get out the vote. And like literally nothing else. I mean, you all heard me beating the drum all week. It's not going to change. Okay. I can't even read my house scribble on this. All right. My notes list this morning is like, so let's talk for a minute about what happened in Kenosha last night. Because I want to make something really clear, and this follows up on a comment yesterday where somebody had raised an issue that was like, the middle of America is going to go for Trump because of what's happening in Kenosha, or what happened in Minneapolis. So I'm just going to say that I don't believe that. I still don't believe it. I think that if you're going to vote for Trump because of something like this, you were looking for a reason to vote for him anyway. I'm not going to give any more airtime to that idea. What I do want to talk about is the fact that white supremacists descended on Kenosha last night and shot people. And there is now footage this morning of the shooter talking to police in advance with his like little Proud Boy armed militia, getting water from the cops right before he walked into the crowd and shot people. And there's also footage of people shouting at the cops, he just shot someone, and the cops like driving right on by. Well, I really want to just, say this. if you have a police force that shot someone 7 times in the back and paralyzed him probably for life for nothing, a black man, who then are like sharing water with armed militia members who are, throwing white power signs while they're carrying long guns and shooting people, you have a really serious problem. And it's not just in Kenosha. I think it's once again a good moment to remind everybody that PBS has been drawing a lot of attention in recent years to the fact that 10 years ago, the FBI warned about white supremacist infiltration into police departments in the United States. And we're still in a situation here where, a white guy who walks into a peacefully protesting crowd and starts shooting people is taken into custody unharmed. And a black man who's breaking up a fight between 2 women is shot 7 times in the back with his 3 children in a car. We need just absolutely radical police reform in this country. We need to disband the police forces like from the bottom and start over. And I'll just add that there's been an enormous amount of disinformation out there this morning. Laura's reading my mind by posting this, claiming that that this particular white boy was attacked by protesters first before he started shooting them. That is a lie. There is footage of him in the street in rubber gloves, carrying a long gun, like an automatic rifle, with throwing a white power sign, walking down the street untouched. So, I think we all need to be aware that, and again, we said a lot about this during the George Floyd uprising. It's worth saying it here again. The white supremacist movements in this country are capitalizing on this to create chaos. And we really need to just be mindful of the fact that the disinformation is writ large right now. You should be getting your information from reliable sources. There are black reporters on the ground in Kenosha, even citizen reporters on the ground in Kenosha who are following all of this, who have pictures and video footage of it. So it's really just critical that you understand what's going on here. I mean, fundamentally, we have yet again, a white supremacist armed gang going into the middle of a Black Lives Matter protest, trying to kick up shit and killing people in the process. So, in other words, please be aware of that. All right. One other thing on Black Lives Matter generally that I just want to mention, some of you may have seen the photographs of what happened in Columbia Heights in Washington, D.C. yesterday, where a group of white kids harassed white diners, insisting that they throw fists in the air to support Black Lives Matter. I'm just going to, there's mixed reporting on whether or not there happened to be one black person in that crowd, but it was by far young white kids doing this. So I have to say something about this as well, because anybody who's been involved in civil rights movements in any way, shape, or form knows that what happened with that particular group is not the game plan. And by the way, it is all actually likely to get more black people killed. Do not be that person. I mean, I feel like I have to come on here and say, that's not allyship. Okay. Allyship is following the lead of people leading the Black Lives Matter movement about showing up and following the instructions and the lead of those people. It is not getting together with a bunch of your white friends and going to scream at white diners on the street. You actually are putting people at risk by doing things like that. And I'll just say one other thing here. There's a lot of, in recent years, there's been a lot of sort of, efforts by white people to collect their own. There's this thing called White Nonsense Roundup on Facebook and the like, where white people will go out on Facebook and yell at other white people who they think are racist. We're in a situation right now where, policing in this country, the veil should have been ripped off hundreds of years ago. Brittany Packnett Cunningham's been talking about this for the last few days. There's no question, right, that we have a very serious problem with systemic racism in policing. And we have forever, literally from the foundations of this country. Okay. If you want to direct your energy somewhere, it should be about ending systemic racism in policing. Going out and yelling at other white people who are out eating lunch or dinner, and claiming that you're doing it in the name of the Black Lives Matter movement is actually appropriating the movement and going against the wishes and instructions of its founders and its leaders. So that's not the way to go. That's just not the way to go. And I will tell you that, like everyone from Jonathan Capehart to Brittany Packnett Cunningham, to, folks who are, original founders of Black Lives Matter, like Brittany, are shouting about this. DeRay. I mean, like it's really not all right. And, I'll tell you one other thing, which any one of us could have predicted who would look at a situation like this. Those images have already been weaponized by the Trump campaign. Like they literally are putting pictures up now this morning saying like, this is Joe Biden's America. Like forget that Trump is currently in office, but like they're using that footage. So, you can't be stupid about this stuff. If you want to be an ally, show up, get to know the Black Lives Matter organizers in your area and follow their lead. Again, it's that whole thing made me really mad. I mean, I was like looking at it going like, oh my God. All right. Which brings me to another point. I have not spent a lot of time talking about Shaun King on this broadcast for a variety of reasons. Some of it has to do with the fact that Black women are leading on the issue of Shaun King. Some of it has to do with the fact that y'all should just know better and do your own research. But I have to come on here today and say something very serious about this, okay? Shaun King is out there this morning saying that if the Kenosha County Police Department doesn't release the name of the names of the police officers who were involved in the shooting a couple of nights ago, that he will just start naming names of random Kenosha Police Department members and they can see how they like it. He's threatening the lives of innocent people right now. This is not, by the way, the first time that Shaun King has done this. And I'm going to just add one other thing here. There is a long, long list of incidents involving Shaun King where he grifted money from people, including a lot of well-meaning white people, and kept it for himself instead of giving it to Black victims of police violence. You do not have to dig very far to find this. So I'm going to just urge everyone, and I did it this morning on my Twitter feed, I'm going to do it here, unfollow Shaun King. He's a grifter. He's dangerous. And at this moment in time, he's actually threatening the lives of people basically to get attention for himself. It's an incredibly dangerous situation. And, I will just tell you, anybody who's been following any Black woman activist of prominence has heard an earful about Shaun King for years now. This is again an instance where you should be listening to what Black women are saying about Shaun King, because he's not, I have to say, let's just leave Bernie aside. I mean, he was a spokesperson for the Bernie campaign. That was a very poor choice on Bernie's part. Because literally Shaun King has stolen, no joke, millions of dollars from people who have been trying to donate to victims of police violence. So, hello, honey. So let's just know that that's something you should all be aware of. All right. Okay, there's burgeoning news breaking this morning about the fact that the FDA has been pressured to alter COVID statistics. You have a belt on. Very good. Sorry, Iron Man is in the room. For those of you who are wondering, well, that's what you're known as, my love. So in any event, one thing you should be aware of is that there is now breaking news that the COVID response was shifted in the very early days for a variety of reasons. Mike Pence being worried about the cruise industry, people being concerned, Trump being concerned about the numbers. There's more and more breaking news about the CDC being influenced and undermined. And just yesterday, we had the head of the CDC come out and say that he had overstated the viability of convalescent plasma to treat COVID. So no, you can't have one more Z-bar right now. You've eaten too many of them already this morning. No. One of the things that I just want to remind everyone of here is that you have to be very mindful of the reporting and the stats. We have a situation here right now in California, which I've talked about a bit off and on. That concerns the fact that the testing numbers are being manipulated now in an effort to try to reopen schools. We are now on our 4th day off the watch list, even though the lag time in testing shows that we should not be. There's a fair amount of outrage happening about this here right now with teachers and parents. We're on virtual for the foreseeable future because we opted into it, but 70% of kids in my county may be forced back to school in some kind of like hybrid or traditional learning model in light of this. That therefore means that people are going to get infected and die. And so it's really of quite serious concern right now, both for everybody locally as well as nationally. Please make sure you understand how the COVID numbers are being reported, particularly how they're being reported in your locality if it impacts things like how schools are going to open, restaurants are going to open, and the like. All right. I had one more topic on my list today that I'm just, I don't really feel comfortable answering. I was asked a question about Don Winslow. Who is a filmmaker who has been putting forward some videos that have then been kind of like shadow banned on Twitter. I will just say that I've seen a couple of instances where his reporting has not been up to par. I myself have retweeted things that have then had to be retracted, that he claimed he had gotten from sources that were not reliable. That doesn't mean the media pieces that he's making aren't compelling. I would just, I don't feel like I have enough to say like go with him or not go with him. I will just say, like, as with everything else, you should be cautious about what you share. And this is a good moment in particular to make sure that you are sharing reliable information. One thing that I will just add at the moment is that quite a number of, I've talked about this phone call that a bunch of these activists, like 300 of us, did on Sunday night with Alyssa Milano and others. Many of us right now who are on that call are now looped into the official DNC talking points, the hashtags that they want us using. All of that is based on research and data about what is resonating with voters right now. So if you see me say something like what I said last night on Twitter, which was like, if they let this Q woman talk, who they then pulled because of all of her anti-Semitic rants. No, I said no. I said no. I said no. I said no. Take it back downstairs. Take it back downstairs. Please. I said no. There's going to be a timeout, my love. The one thing I will say about this is that if you see me tweet out something like Ku Klux Klan, there is a reason for that. It is that Trump chaos. Again, I said this yesterday. I saw a lot of you doing all the right things with this. It's really critical right now that we're falling in line with what the DNC is wanting from a messaging standpoint. And part of that doesn't mean there's not a lot of support from other folks like the Lincoln Project, by the way, who, it's not like all of these things aren't working together. You should all just be aware of that, okay? But one of the things that I just want to say here is that messaging from the top down that is being farmed out to big influencers like myself for purposes of the election is really key for purposes of retweeting, because it gets things trending on Twitter. And the trends on Twitter are things that actually really impact Q, the president, the RNC, the global messaging that comes out. So there is an effort here right now, like an effort here to kind of get everybody on the same party line. And so for that reason, if there is an outlier situation where somebody's out there going like, I don't understand why I'm not trending. Well, the reason for that may be because you're not in the big house of all of us who are now working together to try to get certain things trending at certain times, particularly this week during the RNC. So that's it for today. I obviously have to go deal with, the request to eat 3 chocolate brownie Z-bars right now. And I will talk to all of you tomorrow. We'll be back on regular time tomorrow. Thank you all very much for your patience with our weird little time today. And I'm just going to add one other thing. Please know that the hashtags that I am using the most right now are the ones that are being farmed from the DNC. Nothing wrong with creating your own hashtag. People have done this for quite some time. But this week in particular, because of the RNC, they want the messaging to be very specific. I'm getting like kisses on my hand under the desk. Okay. All right. That's it, everybody. Much love to all of you today. Thanks again for your understanding about the time change today. And I have to go deal with Iron Man. Oh, what?
I have a question.
Please tell me you didn't eat that.
No.
No. Okay, good. All right. I'll talk to all of you tomorrow. I love you guys. I'll see you then. Bye.
How funny was that one?